What's good, people? I'm international speaker Dr. Coffee Cup Chuck, and today's episode is about the father wound. And for this episode, I have composed two letters, one to my father and one to my son. Excuse the red eyes, but both of these letters were some pretty hard letters to compose. I hope you guys enjoy them and enjoy the show. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Enjoy. What's good, Pops? There are words I've carried inside of me for most of my life. Words that once lived in a place, anger, confusion, and hurt. But today those words come from somewhere different. Today they come from forgiveness. You're no longer here in this world. And because of that, there were conversations that we never got to actually have. Questions never asked and feelings that I never spoke out loud. For many years, I carried those things quietly, trying to understand what it meant to grow up without a dad in my life. While other kids had their dad standing beside them, teaching them, correcting them, and protecting them, I often found myself looking around and realizing that I was pretty much standing alone. I forgive you for not being there. I forgive you for the empty seats at school functions where a father should have probably been sitting next to his kid. I forgive you for the looks of other parents when they realized that I didn't have one standing beside me. As a child, those moments made me feel a little different. I carried a label that I didn't ask for. I forgive you for making me feel like a bastard kid in a room where other kids had complete families. I forgive you for those Christmas moments when we waited for that big box of toys that you promised us. You said you was gonna send, and every year we believed we would finally get it. And as children, we held on to that hope, only to eventually realize that that box was never coming. I forgive you for the disappointment that followed those empty promises. I forgive you for the pain you caused my mom, watching a man hurt the woman who was trying to raise us with something no child should ever have to witness. Those memories were heavy for a child to carry. I forgive you for the times you could have called, but you didn't. I forgive you for the birthdays that passed without a card, a visit, or even a simple acknowledgement. I forgive you for the guidance I never received, the lessons about manhood, responsibility, and fatherhood that a boy supposed to learn from his dad. For many years, I didn't realize how much those missing lessons really mattered. The truth is, growing up without father left holes in places I didn't understand at the time. And because I didn't always have an example of what fatherhood looked like, there were moments in my own life where I fumbled the ball with my own son. That's one of the hardest truths ever that I had to face. Your absence didn't just affect me, it echoed down through generations. There were times when I should have been stronger, times when I should have been more present, times when I should have had known better. But the reality is, a boy who grew up without a father often has to learn how to become that man through trials and mistakes and painful lessons. I had to learn those lessons the hard way. For many times, I carried anger about that. I wonder why you didn't stay, why you didn't fight harder to be in our lives, why you didn't show up when it mattered. But as I grew older, something changed inside of me. I began to understand that holding on to anger towards a man who was no longer here wasn't helping me heal. It wasn't going to make things better for me, and it certainly wasn't helping me become the father that I wanted to be. So today I choose forgiveness, not because the past didn't hurt, not because those wounds weren't real, but because I refuse to let those wounds control the rest of my life. Your absence taught me something powerful. You see, it taught me how important presence truly is. It taught me how deeply a father's role matters in a child's life. And it taught me that cycles only continue when someone refuses to confront them. Yes, I can't go back and change the boyhood I had. I can't change the fact that you're gone and that we never had the conversation a father and a son should have. But I can take the lessons from the pain and use them to become a better man and move forward. I can choose growth. I can choose to heal. And I can choose to do everything in my power to show up for the people who are still here in my life. So wherever your spirit may be, Dad, I want you to know one thing. I forgive you. Not because the past matters, but because my peace matters now. The man I am becoming matters more than the pain I once carried. This is from me, Dad, your son. I love you. What's good, Junior? There's something that I've needed to say to you for a long time, and today I want to finally put it in words. First, I want to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the times in your life when I wasn't there the way a father should have been. I'm sorry for the moments I missed, the memories that should have been made, and the time that slipped by because of choices I made when I was younger. When you were born, I wasn't there. Instead of being in the room to welcome you into this world, I was sitting behind bars. That was something that stayed with me for years, because a father should be there the moment his child opens his eyes into this world. The truth is this, son, it wasn't just that one moment. I'm sorry for choosing the street life over responsibility. I'm sorry for giving in to weakness when I should have been strong. I'm sorry for the times I chased the wrong things instead of focusing on what truly mattered, being present as a father. I'm sorry for the birthdays that I missed. I'm sorry for the school events I wasn't sitting in the crowd for. I'm sorry for the lessons I should have been there to teach you in person instead of having to figure things out all on your own. I'm sorry for the years that prison took away from us. Every time a man goes in and out of prison, it doesn't just affect him. It affects the people who love him. And one of the hardest things for me to have to face is knowing that the time we could have been spending building our bond as father and son would by my absence. Time is something you can never get back. There are conversations we should have had earlier. There are moments we should have shared and memories we should have built together. And I regret that deeply, son. But I also want you to understand something important about life. A man is not defined only by his mistakes. He is defined by whether he has the courage to take responsibility for them and grow from them. The road I walked in my younger years was filled with bad decisions, bad influence, and moments where I chose pride, ego, or surviving over responsibility and fatherhood. And I won't make excuses for that. Those were my choices, and I own all of them. But those same mistakes also taught me lessons that changed my life. They taught me about responsibility, accountability. They taught me about growth. They taught me about becoming a better man. And part of becoming that better man has always been about wanting to be a better father for you. Even when I wasn't physically there the way I should have been, you were never absent from my heart, son, or my thoughts. You were always one of the reasons I wanted to change my life and become something who could stand tall and say, I'm proud of you and the man that I've become. I know that apologies can't give back lost time, but what I can give you is some honesty and love and the commitment that the man I am today is not the same man that I was back then. Life has a way of teaching us lessons, son, through pain, and one of the greatest lessons that I've learned is how valuable family truly is. Son, if there was anything I hope for you to take from this, is your past does not have to define who you are. You are capable of becoming anything you choose to become. You don't have to walk the same road I walked or make the same mistakes I made. In fact, one of my greatest hopes as your father is that you learn from my life and use those lessons to build and become an even stronger man that you are. I love you, son, and I'm sorry for the lost time, but I will always be grateful for every moment we still have the opportunity to have. I know I'm not perfect. You're not perfect, but it's okay. As long as we have the capacity to respect each other. Well, I guess that's the biggest and best relationship you can actually build. This is for the men who are tired of pretending that they're okay. For the man carrying pressure, responsibility, doubt, and expectation, and still showing up every single day. This is a space where strength means honesty, where growth comes from trust, and where becoming a better man starts from the inside out. Welcome to the Positive Man Show. Real conversations, real struggles, real growth. Because a positive man isn't a perfect man. He's a man who's willing to do the work. Let's grow. Let's heal. Let's lead. This is the Positive Man Show. Welcome to another episode of the Positive Man Show. I'm your host, Dr. Coffee Cup Chuck, alongside my brother and co-host, the Black Hawk.
Welcome, I'm Black Hawk, observing what most don't see and trusting what can't always be explained.
Today's episode is entitled The Father Wound, Healing What We Never Received. Many men grew up without fathers in their lives. Some had fathers who were physically present but emotionally absent, abuse, abandonment, silence. And many men today are still trying to heal those wounds while raising families of their own. But today we're going to start off with a quote that's relevant to what we'll be speaking about today. And that quote goes like this: until you heal the wounds of your past, you will continue to bleed into the present. How do you go about unresolving pain before it actually becomes anger? Today, we are going to have a very interesting guest. I'm going to give him a very proper introduction. This is actually our very first guest on the Positive Man Show. He lives in Leavenworth, Kansas with his wife of 34 years. They've raised 3 incredible kids who are now out in the world pursuing their own passions and building their own lives. Especially Darren is known as a transformational leader with deep experiences in social and environmental innovation. During his career, he helped establish one of the country's premier corporate sustainability programs at Sprint, which many of you now know as T-Mobile, helping shape how many corporations think about responsibility and long-term impact. He later went on to work with sustainability brands where he helped lead a movement of global corporations towards what is called good growth. The idea that businesses, success, and positive impact should go hand in hand. Today, Darren is the founder of a consultancy called Ingenuity, which he launched 3 years ago. Through Ingenuity, he helps businesses, local governments, and nonprofits unlock the power of sustainability-focused innovations. But he didn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. Darren is also launching a new venture called Business Ascending, a project that explores how consciousness, heart-centered intelligence, and deeper awareness can help elevate the way we live, lead, and build our livelihoods. So today, we're excited to dive into a conversation about leadership, purpose, sustainability, and how the way we think, the way we lead can shape the futures of our communities. Gentlemen, please help us welcome Darren Beck.
Chuck, I need you as my hype man. That was amazing.
I forgot. There we go. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen. So share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you help people in this world become better.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. The way I show up is to help folks think about how they can go about doing business in ways that allow for them to stay true to who they are and bring their gifts into the world, and at the same time too to stay connected with all of the things that the world is writ large. Kind of thinking about it more holistically. A lot of businesses, as I was growing up, I think we could think about they're a little bit more toxic. In fact, the EPA was created not too much after I was born, and out of reasons that came down to businesses being very extractive, being very kind of disposable, right, in terms of just how they show up in the world, and not really taking much consideration in terms of the impact that they have in the environment, the impact that they have on society and the rest. But it's amazing when you think about what business does at the end of the day. It's about helping people to solve problems and to make their lives better, right? So if you can show up taking care of these massive problems that we now have in the world, where it feels like, man, society is kind of pulling apart at the fraying at the fabric of society, and that in many ways we kind of find that so much of that kind of natural world that we live in seems to kind of be eroding, and kind of seems that it's been given anything but first priority. If you can show up in a way that your business actually brings solutions to bear, then the great news is you got ways in which you can show up as an ally for so many people in the world who feel like those problems are bigger than themselves, right? Something larger than them as an individual could take advantage of. And then again, I think there's an opportunity with Business Ascending, which is the new venture that's coming along, to kind of show about how we have done a tremendous amount through business to innovate through a lot of external technology. But
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, it's about going inside. It's about that kind of inner tech that we can all bring forward in a way that helps us to realize that we're all connected, and that there's a lot more kind of going on under the surface than we all kind of give credence to. And to the extent that we can find a way to allow business to flow through again who we are and what we can really bring into the world as our gifts, I think that takes us to a whole nother level.
What's the connection between you, the business, and the mindset?
Yeah, me, the business and the mindset, that may actually have come from the father wound, right? So we'll kind of get into that along the way today too. But I think for me, hard to know who I am without knowing the fact that I'm adopted. Was kind of brought into the world in a way where it was both kind of a challenge for me and the largest kind of grace I have in my life experience. I came about with a kind of a larger trust in government and society and business because overall I was born into a society that was kind enough to kind of take me from one loving person who brought me into this world into to the hands of a loving family that raised me, which is great. I mean, so just knowing that there was something larger kind of in the background kind of making that happen, it grounded me in terms of something that said, the world's a good place, right? And in some ways, just this opportunity to kind of pay back the world in a positive way. It took good care of me. I want to take good care of the world. I think the other thing too is kind of maybe a downside is I didn't necessarily have the grounding that so many people have about who I am and where I came from, right? So I didn't have that kind of stability into the world. And so the way I guess I kind of wound up processing it was if I'm a man without a country, then the world is my connection, right? I found a connection with anyone who might be feeling like they didn't necessarily belong, and kind of found that I had a brotherhood and a sisterhood that was global in nature because I couldn't necessarily pinpoint where I came from and where I would necessarily plant my flag, right, in terms of my heritage and the rest. It came back through the world as a way to kind of show up in a way to kind of help heal some of that pain that people feel in not belonging and helping folks to kind of find that larger connection that we all have in the world. So you kind of just if you want to dive into some of the wiring that's going on inside of me, that's really where a lot of the ways I show up in the world come from. And I've always been really curious about innovation. I always kind of feel like we were born into a lot of systems in this world, some of them good, some of them not so good, and I'm always kind of looking for opportunities to do better, right? Do better in ways that don't have people feeling like they've been left out of the equation. So
I remember when I first met you, you guys were, what was that art center?
oh, yeah, yeah. It was over at the Keystone Innovation District. Yeah,
Yes,
that's right, downtown.
you guys had started an organization of people, and the whole purpose of that organization was to bring like-minded people around to create ideas of how you utilize self-responsibility in a social environment to help push the environment, right?
That's
What was
exactly
the
right.
purpose of the group again?
We're blessed in the Kansas City area to have Father Justin Matthews. He started both reconciliations or leads reconciliation services and started Thelma's Kitchen. If you guys have had the opportunity to go over and eat there down by Operation Breakthrough in downtown KC, and it's called the KC Social Venture Meetup. And it's an opportunity for folks who are showing up that have businesses. You could be a nonprofit, you could be a for-profit, but if you are finding a way through your organization to kind of meet the needs of society in a way that kind of bring ethical behavior into the forefront, and at the same time too are engaging the marketplace to make that happen, it's just a great place for folks to be able to come to say you don't have to do one or the other. You can marry them up pretty nicely and find that you can be both a profitable venture or even as a nonprofit, one that can bring in a significant amount of funding, income, and revenue that still goes hand in hand with just doing good. Good growth, just as you had said earlier, is how do you do well by doing good?
I'm gonna hit on one more thing, and after that, Dave is gonna take us into a sponsorship shout out. But when I met you, I also found out that you had a relation with a very special individual who, kind of like myself, found a way to turn his life around and change the trajectory of his future. How did you and the former mayor of Leavenworth, how did you guys meet?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my wife and I moved to Leavenworth just a little under 5 years ago, and as we came into town, we're looking for someone to help out with some of the lawn work of all things. And a neighbor had hired Jermaine Wilson, who was taking care of their lawn, and came over and talked to him about doing ours. And man, I tell you, he walked across the yard, biggest smile. I mean, the firmest handshake coming through. And I thought there's just so much more depth to this man than just mowing lawns, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, I was right. At that point in time, he had already been mayor of Leavenworth once, and just shortly after that was reelected for the second time. Again, part of our city council, and served as mayor twice. And is now often out there uplifting so many folks who found themselves incarcerated in life. He himself had been incarcerated and had found a pathway towards um, coming back into the world, both with confidence. With I think he would be the first to tell you with God's support, and as well as just having this ability to have a community supporting you to move forward in a new way. So he and I have had a chance to connect on occasion. I don't want to say that's a really deep relationship, but someone I admire, someone I respect, and have sought out opportunities to collaborate where they may be in the future.
Like yourself, Brother Darren, he is an amazing man. I've seen a lot of the things that he's done in the past and what he continues to do. I mean, he's like a very big advocate for second chance
Yeah.
people. I didn't give up on myself like he didn't give up on himself. We're doing some great things, and I love to see people not give up on themselves and turn around and do some amazing things for other people. He
I think
and
the two of you
he's
stand so tall, and you're both such inspirations and such role models. I feel like for those who are kind of wondering what really could lie ahead of them, and have found just I think flourished in ways you might never have thought you could. So it's fascinating.
definitely. We're going to shout out one of our sponsors.
So our first sponsor is going to be B&T Drilling and Boring. Helps contractors and business install utilities without tearing up pavement, landscaping, or existing structures through precision boring technology. They support electricians installing conduit and transformers, telecom companies installing data and camera lines, plumbers installing water, sewer, and gas lines, sprinkler contractors running irrigation under parking lots, cities needing drainage solutions, general contractors needing excavation support, and homeowners needing specialized underground work. They also install, repair, and remove pole light bases and provide excavation services with access to concrete and asphalt repair solutions.
They do a lot of stuff.
It sounds like it.
Actually, I know the owner very well, man. He does a very good job at what he does. He's definitely helped us out of a lot of situations when we needed to make some underground repairs like super fast. So if you guys ever need to go underground and make it work, reach out to BT&T Drilling and Boring. And so the subject today is about the father wound. What does that even mean? We got a definition here. The term father wound is commonly used in psychology, counseling, and personal development to describe emotional pain or unresolved trauma caused by a difficult absence, a harmful relationship with one's father figure. It can affect both men and women and often influences identity, relationships, confidence, and emotional health later on in life. How does it show up in adulthood? Here are some of the common ways a father wound can show up in an adult life. Number 1, seeking constant approval. Number 2, difficulty trusting others. Number 3, fear of abandonment. Number 4, struggles with self-worth. Number 5, angry towards authority. That was a hard one for me. Number 6, overachieving to prove value. Number 7, an emotional detachment. Number 8, difficulty with masculinity or identity, especially in men. Number 9, relationship patterns. Number 10, becoming the opposite of their father, abandonment, validation seeking, anger. Earlier on, you stated that you were adopted. How young were you when you were adopted? Did you ever hear from the parents? How was it like growing up, trying to figure out, because when you're adopted, you got medical issues that can play a factor in it, because you don't know what medical conditions have. They say it's hard to love a child that's not really yours as much as you love a child that's yours. But I don't know about that, because I've seen movies like The Good Son. And how was it for you going through life as you did and still ending up as this powerful contributor to humanity?
So I'll give you a quick insight into the adoption, and then I'm gonna lay out two things that come to mind for me around the father wound. First, adopted, gosh, only about 2 weeks old. 2 weeks after I was born, found my way into the new family. This is back in the late '60s when closed adoptions were kind of the rule of thumb in most cases. Open adoptions, which we've kind of come to know a little bit more so since that point in time, where you might know who the birth parents might have been, and maybe they're a part of that relationship moving forward. That was not the case for me. So in that particular case, the birth mom doesn't know where the kiddo is heading off to, and the adoptive parents don't know who the birth mom was. I knew some things, very general information about them as a whole, maybe college educated or whatever that might be. But it's interesting, I want to I want to speak very directly to what you talked about loving someone, the depth of the love that someone can bring to bear, whether they are your biological kiddo or whether they are your adopted kiddo. It was never in doubt in my family that I was loved as deeply as my sister, who's also biological, which is fascinating. Kind of like the parents waited for years to be able to kind of bring a child into their life. I came in. Must have taken the stress off because my sister came biologically about a year and a half later. The two things that really stand out for me around the father wound as I think about this is, one, I got to tell you, this parenting thing, man, it's not for the faint of heart. I sit here today as a dad of three grown adults, and it's a challenge. My dad rose to the occasion. I love my dad. He brought me into the family, gave me a house, gave me a roof over my head, made sure I was clothed, made sure I always had food to eat. That was never in doubt. It's interesting. He passed on so many great things to me. I think parents as a whole, parenting's a mixed bag. You take that baby home and with you, and it's not like they come with a user manual. You do your best. You rise to that occasion as best as you can. My dad taught me to think for myself and never kind of necessarily go with the crowd. You got to be true to who you are and to move forward in that way. He taught me integrity, me that ability to truly have values and stand up for them. I think about the second piece I'll kind of dive into as well. Think about the father's wound. It stems from your father's wound. Along the way. So I think we all kind of go through it. We all experience it, but you got to remember it's generational, and I think the question as we get through this dialogue here is, how do you break some of those cycles along the way? And my dad, again, just kind of go that extra mile here in this conversation, always showed up for my sporting events because one of his father's wounds was that his dad, my grandfather, drove a bus for decades. He would be out there for trailways and he'd be driving people all around the country, but he wasn't there for my dad growing up for his sporting events. So there's ways in which my dad was trying to parent correctively. His dad didn't show up, but he showed up for me in so many ways. In fact, he coached my team back in junior high. That being said, let's dive into the adoption and kind of think about where he's at and how a lot of the wounds he carried was sort of like that perfect storm for me on the adoption side along the way too. When he came into this world, his mom, my grandmother, nearly giving birth to him. Imagine how traumatic that was for both of them, because although we don't consciously think about this, whatever we experienced as we were kind of riding along in the womb and through the delivery and all the rest, it was a shared experience, and it's tucked down there somewhere for all of us, right? We're all kind of walking around with that in our subconscious. She had this deep, today we'd put it in different terms, right? This deep sort of postpartum depression, nearly lost her life, kind of very depressed about the scenario. She can't have kids moving forward. He was her second kiddo, and both he's this joy she's brought into the world, but he's also the one who ended her ability to have any more kids. And nearly through the process, I mean, there's some harsh feelings going on there along the way. He, at times, because she was in such a depressive state, really kind of had to have others fending for him for this first couple of years, right? Didn't get the time, the attention that he could have otherwise. So for him, I feel like most of his life has been kind of moving towards stability and security. And he had a mom who I love her, again, had a great relationship while she was with us. Was very critical of him. Very critical. Imagine again how in many ways ways in which he impacted her life that he couldn't control, but it was very critical of him. And that critical nature passed right along to me. And you take me, I come into the world later on, right? I'm adopted, come into this lovely family. He's been able to kind of invite me into at a very young age. And I even remember when I was a kiddo, he'd be the one sitting at my bedside, kind of telling me the story about how the adoption process was something that really allowed for something special to happen. They got to choose me. They kind of chose to bring me into the family. It was something that was a gift for me and a gift for them. And that was great the way it was framed it. But I kind of look back on this, and I knew from the very kind of youngest ages I was adopted, but thinking that, wow, and I don't know, I could put it in words a lot. I was really angry as a little guy. I had a lot of sensitivity and didn't quite know what to do with it. But I think the key was I was born into a stable situation that very quickly got destabilized, right? I lost something. What I lost along the way was a foundation. And in my mind, although I couldn't express it, the question was, if that could happen to somebody once, right? Someone cares enough to carry you into the world 9 months, right? And then give you up to somebody else. Wow. Who's to say that couldn't happen with the family I'm now in, right? Because it happened once. I can't explain why it happened. This closed adoption doesn't provide any kind of Q&A going on, right, for a little guy. And so I could give you 100 different possible reasons why it might have happened, but the thing for me is, just as my safe harbor, I started seeking safe harbor, right? And so all of a sudden, for a dad who's got a lot of criticism in his father's wound growing up and kind of or parental wound growing up, passes that kind of criticism on to me. I'm kind of like, dude, whatever I need to do to kind of show up here and maintain the stability of this household. You want me to get good grades? Great, I'll show up and I'll get good grades. You want those chores done? Sure, I'll show up and get those chores done. So a lot of the criticism, along with kind of this foundation that I was hoping to maintain and secure. Again, I couldn't put words to this as a little guy, but I'm kind of coming to that now. Led me to this point where I feel like I've battled being this perfectionist my entire life, this overachiever, constantly, I mean, all the definitions you read out before, constantly seeking that kind of validation. And I think the other thing too is that dad, even to this day, probably is still challenged with this, and that's this emotional numbing that we as men do. And I think that's probably the most important thing I want to leave with the audience is the emotional detachment. Because we as men came from generations before us that were really about, they, in many cases, they saw and survived very challenging ordeals in their life, and they just stuffed it down. It's like, got to stuff it down, you got to move on. Stuff it down and move on. And you think you kind of cast it aside, but you're really just stuffing it down or delaying it for another day. But there's a lot of numbing we can do over time. There's a lot of repression that goes on over time. And for someone, my dad's certainly not big on pain. I don't think any of us are big on pain, but it's easier to kind of keep it down. And I've got to say, growing up, I may recall only having seen him cry once. And here I was a kid who was more attuned to crying regularly. And again, I think for him, what was so difficult was for a little guy who had to kind of figure out how to compartmentalize when he was growing up and just kind of find a way to move his way through the world, he found that a lot of my sensitivity, my tendency to be a bit more emotional, tendency to be a bit more kind of angry at times, was just something he couldn't quite figure out how to grapple with. And so the encouragement was, Darren, you got to move on. Darren, you got to stop crying. Darren, you got to keep, kind of tuck those feelings away and make sure that's something that you don't necessarily make drive your life. You got to pull it together, son. And again, I'm paraphrasing here along the way. It's interesting. Again, love my dad, love so many things that he's done for me, but at the same time too, his wounds contributed to my own, and we kind of beget one another. The question is, I think we can discuss is, how do you go about breaking those cycles?
Like for me, because like I grew up with so many siblings. I got 8 brothers and 3 sisters. I grew up with 6 brothers and 2 sisters, and I'm like at the bottom. I'm one of the younger ones. Like I remember there was times when we lived with our dad and his second wife. When we was growing up, I remember like for example, like somebody get in trouble, they would do something. Well, everybody's lining up for a butt whipping. Right. And I don't mean necessarily like we would get it as bad as my older siblings, but guess what? You're staying in line too. You look back and like what you said with your dad and like the emotional and the different cycles that carries on from the older generation to the newer. Okay, yeah, if you want to, chastise your kid, give them punishments, it's not going to look like it did when we were growing up. Right. If you believe in butt whippings, hey, you get a butt whipping, that's it. But not, I remember growing up, I've seen kids get tore up with extension cord. They were like running underneath the houses in Florida because they're sitting on blocks. And you're like, man, that's like now that's even like the last 20 or 30 years, that's child abuse. For our dad, had a short fuse. like anything would tick him off. He was okay, but like he was basically alcoholic. You know, he loved drinking. Any chance he was at home, he would be drinking. Especially back then in the 80s, he would be drinking and he'd be driving. And it's like it didn't matter what. Somebody would pick him off, and the next thing you know, he would fly off the handle. If it was one of the kids or if somebody owed him money. I remember this one particular time, we were at the 7-Eleven. It was me, my two older brothers. They're 2 years older than me, and we was at the 7-Eleven getting something, and so we're leaving, and there was a bunch of guys out there, and lo and behold, here comes our dad in his truck, and all you hear is he like starts skirting in the 7-Eleven. All you hear is like the tires locking up, and all the guys say, "Oh, it's Ed." And next thing you know, our dad jumps out of his truck and starts running after him, but he notices when he jumps out, he didn't put his truck in park, and so he goes and jumps back in his truck, puts it in park, and he used to, like, we grew up in 70s, 80s, or whatever, how people used to carry like shotguns and rifles on the back side of the pickup truck and stuff on the inside. Well, he carried an axe handle. This a regular axe handle. So we witnessed all this. He grabs that axe handle, and I guess the guy that owed him money, he starts chasing him. And he chased him like a block or two. And the guy, I don't know if he got up to the guy that owed him money or not, but he ran him down. And so it's like he had that kind of temper. So it was kind of hard to navigate when he was around, having that kind of anger and outbursts. Like it was very black and white. And there was times where we had good times around, like the whole family. But I look back and it's like he was no fuse. People knew him. He had this reputation that he didn't put up with nothing. And if you crossed him, you're going to get beat up. He just had that kind of reputation.
My dad was a drunk too. He was a good dad when he wasn't drunk. He had no problem. He loved his kids. He had 3 boys. He loved his wife, but he would get drunk. And when he get drunk, he would change into a totally different person. And because of it, I don't partake in a lot of drinking, but it created an environment where my mom couldn't be in the house with him anymore because they got into a really big, bad knockout, drag out fight. And that was it. She had to make a decision to raise me in Chicago, Illinois, where I was from, around my dad, or move me, my older brother, and herself to Omaha, Nebraska, where my grandparents had moved. She felt more secure with her parents, so she moved us away from my dad. Now I'm without that father figure. I can't really relate to any issues with a man in the household. My mom never remarrying outside of my dad. She went through a series of other men, and she created other children with these other men. It kind of made it hard for me to identify what fatherhood really was because everybody just kept leaving. My dad left and the boyfriend would leave. And as a boy, you're looking to connect and attach to a figure that's a male figure that's strong enough, that's tucking you in at night and helping you with schoolwork and helping you learn how to dribble the ball or ride a bike. We just didn't have that outside of uncles or an older brother. We had to rely on that type of stuff without the father figure. So what do you think happened when I had my kid? I never understood what it was to be a father. So when I became a father, it was loving. I loved it. Matter of fact, I started fatherhood in jail. So the first 8 months of his life, I wasn't even there. That created a whirlwind of now I got to figure it out. I have to figure out what fatherhood is about. So that means trial and error. And throughout the process of trial and error, you're losing trust with the kid. And it ends up later on in life creating that, like you said earlier, that revolving door. Now, since my kid didn't have that understanding of what it was to have a father because his father didn't have that understanding of what is to be a father, we have problems and issues understanding where our placement is in life. So you got to figure out a way to break that cycle. You have to figure out what is it going to take for you to address some of these issues that you had growing up without these misplaced, like without that father or without the understanding of who's my real dad. Because like you, I went through not just one adoption, I went through a series of different adoptions because of the different men that came in and out of my life with them leaving every time, not just always on I don't like you, you're not my kid. It's me and your mom don't get along anymore. I'm sorry, kid, but I'm gonna miss you, but I'm out. You can imagine what my kid is going through right now. We don't have a good relationship because of the lack of understanding of fatherhood I had when I was still growing up with this kid underneath me growing up too. So now I know who I am, where I want to be in my life, and I've made adjustments in my life and I've created this new world for myself. Now my son has to go through what I was going through. So, like I said, it's a wound, and if it goes untouched, unhealed, if you're not trying to get to the root of that problem or that issue, you are only creating another doorway for more issues to come into your life.
My personal belief is that we chose these opportunities in the bigger picture, and we'll get into that with the book that I'll recommend here in a moment. But in the bigger picture, we chose these opportunities because through our greatest challenges and through our some of the most negative experiences we can come through, we grow stronger. It's an opportunity for us to rise up on the other side in ways that build strength that these softer experiences probably wouldn't have given us, right? So we all come into this world to figure out how we can chisel and shape ourselves through the experiences that we have. That being said, you're exactly right. The one thing that your dads needed, my dads needed, that we need, that our kids need too, is the same thing you mentioned just a moment ago, Chuck, which is having someone to talk to. You may not necessarily have had those father figures to be able to find, but you've got Blackhawk and you've got me and you've got others who are now around here where we can have conversations about these experiences and start unpacking it, right? And there's a little Chuck out there, there's a little Blackhawk out there, there's a little Darren out there who went through all of this. I mean, dude, Blackhawk, your dad grabbing that axe handle and going after a guy who owed him
And
money?
that's
That's
just one story.
what is that telling you as a little guy, right? I mean,
It
just
was a,
think about we're all sort of freaking out inside from just these kind of little things we see our parents, our father in this particular case doing. And so your ability to go back, I found this to be very helpful in healing. And this is what you had spoken to a moment ago, Chuck. I had this opportunity to go back to someone who was very fundamental in my life, kind of growing up through that adoption experience, and to spend time with him directly, to be able to kind of say, listen, grown up Darren gets it. I understand it. I see the big picture now. Still maybe processing a bit of it, but I get it. The problem was little Darren didn't understand that. And I'm still carrying around all of little Darren's anxiety. And I need 15 minutes of your time just to have you listen on the other end of a conversation and let me go back into, and it's something I don't do much. Again, as a guy, I don't think I'm generalizing, but guys don't really have a lot of experience of this, right? I was kind of going back into remembering that time, remembering why I would get kind of angry at times, remembering about, all these kinds of these feelings I was carrying around. And I just shared them with that person in my life for 15 minutes. And they gave me a safe space to be able to share it. Is everyone going to have that opportunity? Maybe not. Some people may have had a father who left them with quite a wound, but isn't even here today, has passed on, is on the other side at this point in time. So you can't even physically, it's difficult to even kind of sit down and have a conversation like that, whether it's role playing with somebody, whether it's taking something that you remember fondly of your father, because I think we've all touched on these great experiences we've had that we can remember when times were good. Maybe sit down at a kitchen table in the evening, again, if your father's passed, kind of set an empty chair there, set aside, maybe he loved Snickers bars, or I don't know what loved, my father-in-law loved, 2 Coors Light the night before he went to bed. And so you can set those 2 Coors Lights across the table and have that conversation. Let that little guy back in the day, and don't talk about it, don't analyze it, don't give it the grown-up treatment. Be that really vulnerable little guy and go over and just unpack. Here's how it made me feel when you went over and chased that guy down the street with the axe handle. Here's how it made me feel when we all lined up to get our whooping because someone was acting out of line amongst the other siblings. And be honest about it and don't shirk from it, right? Because it's interesting at the end of the day. The thing that's God given, and we'll dive into this in a moment. The thing that's God given to us is sort of like this internal navigation system. Is our feelings, the things that are going to serve us best moving forward to become the people who we really are inside. We've been spending our whole lifetime trying to get out. Comes through feeling our feelings. And it sounds like nothing I grew up with. No older man in my life took me aside and said, "Oh man, those feelings you got, they're valid." It's like, if you're feeling angry, feel angry, man. Have it out and then just be done with it. Move on. I find it odd being in the situation saying that, but guys, feeling those feelings and have a conversation with it. If you're not having that conversation with your dad directly, have it with some friends who can role play it with you along the way, or just unpack it with somebody, because you're carrying it around, and whether you know it or not, that next heart attack, that next anxiety attack, if you don't think that it's taking a toll on your body, you got to be thinking again, because you are carrying it, whether or not you want to acknowledge you're carrying it, and physically it's sitting in there with you. I think that's oftentimes why men have shorter lives as well. Just the toll of the emotions we carry that we don't express. It's
Oh, yeah.
fascinating, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. You mentioned that, Darren. I know my wife and I probably since COVID, we've seen this quote. It says, fear your feelings, choose your behavior. My wife had wrote it on a little quiz card, and we taped it to our mirror, so every day we'd look at it, and it's kind of a reminder, like you just said, you're gonna feel what you feel it, but choose your behavior.
That's a nice quote. This episode is also sponsored by the unstoppable coach Terrence Lethbridge. If you're looking for life-changing guidance, leadership development, or personal breakthrough coaching, reach out to Dr. Terrence, the Unstoppable Coach Lethbridge. That's www.unstoppablecoaching.com, or you can also follow him at any of his social media sites by just going and searching out Unstoppable Coaching DB. I'm interested to hear this poem.
I'm going to give it to you in two parts, and I'll be brief about this, but I'm going to first read from a book that I find inspiring, that, again, I feel like if folks are interested in picking it up to kind of lead towards some healing, it's a book that I think can help get them there. And then to your point, yes, again, a good friend of mine, Cy Vossen, is a life coach, working a lot with young men, helping them to get in touch with just what we've talked about here. He wrote a poem. It's powerful. Again, not a guy who usually technically reads poems, but I'm kind of this is new territory for all of us today here along the way. Let me begin with that book, though, first. Conversations with God. It's a book that I took in, and I found it probably in the late 90s, written back in 92. And it's interesting, man. There's a guy named Neil Donald Walsh who had a modern day conversation with God, with Source. And it was fascinating what came through that. No more than a page here. I'll just read that before I get into the poem, because I feel like it sets it up nicely. It's a good bridge from where we've been. God coming back in the conversation. It starts it off this way. Feeling is the language of the soul. If you want to know what's true for you about something, look to how you're feeling about it. Feelings are sometimes difficult to discover. They're often even more difficult to acknowledge, yet hidden in your deepest feelings is your highest truth. So what is the soul after? What the soul is after is the highest feeling of love that you can imagine. This is the soul's desire. This is its purpose. The soul is after the feeling, not the knowledge, but the feeling. It already has the knowledge. The knowledge is conceptual, but feeling is about the experience. It's experiential. The soul wants to feel itself and thus be known in its own experience. The highest feeling is the experience of the unity with all that is. And this is the greatest return to truth, for which the soul yearns, and this is the feeling of perfect love. And perfect love is to feeling what perfect white is to color. So many think that white is like the absence of color, but it's not. It's the inclusion of all colors. White is every other color exists combined. So too, love isn't the absence of an emotion, hatred or anger or lust or jealousy or covetousness, but the summation of all feelings. It's the sum total, the aggregate amount, the whole thing. So thus, for the soul to experience perfect love, you've got to be able to experience every human feeling along the way. So how can you have compassion for someone and for something for which you don't understand? How can I forgive in another that which I've never experienced myself? Be it again being angry or hatred and all the rest. So we see both the simplicity and the awesome magnitude of the soul's journey. We understand at last what it's up to. The purpose of our human soul is to experience all of it so that the soul can be all of it. And healing is the process. I think this is just perfect what you said, Blackhawk. Healing is the process of accepting all and then just choosing the best, kind of moving forward. So in that case, I feel like, again, if you want to get down to the very brass tacks of who we are and what we are here to experience and all the rest, it comes through the feeling of it all. And if we kind of set it aside and say, that's not worthy of my time, that's not worthy of my experience, you've got just such a narrow band of what you are feeling in life, and you're not bringing it all in so that you can relate to everyone else in a way that makes more sense. I'm going to go one step forward now and read that poem. If you feel inspired by this, you can find him at saivasam.com. It's SAI, V as in Victor, A, S as in Sam, A, M as in Mary.com. So Sai wrote this poem that kind of gets into a lot of the work that he does with young men, and he starts it off this way. He calls it a shortage of men. Creating spaces for young adult males to feel like men. That feels like the path that I'm on, me speaking like Sai, that I'm on. Not just the path, but the mission. Everything that life is teaching me about how to show up as a man, I was definitely a boy for 20 years. I was developing more manly qualities over the past few years, but I've been redirected to kind of speed that process up exponentially. It feels like that, kind of this quantum emotional growth, because the world is lacking men who truly feel. And we have enough guys who are nice on the surface, enough guys who follow all the rules but have secrets for days, enough guys who wear masks in their professions and their relationships and their friendships and their faith and their finances. We have a shortage of men who can not only roar like the king of the jungle, but cry and empty out like the mighty Amazon River. We have a shortage of men can not only be the sturdy mountain of Everest, but have the emotional depth and diversity of the Mariana Trench. We have a shortage of men who not only have a big chest, but lead with a bigger heart. We have a shortage of men who not only fight with their sword, but can switch it up and express with their words. We have a shortage of men who not only want to plant their flag at the peak, but truly start at the base, like Mauna Kea. We have a shortage of men who not only amass knowledge, but master how to quiet the mind. We have a shortage of men who not only create value for the now, but also sustain value for the tomorrow. This is the type of man that I feel more and more of every day.
Powerful, man. It's definitely what this show needs to hear, because when you want to capitalize and put a punctuation at the end of the sentence on the Positive Man Show, and you read an insert like that, Brother Beck, that's amazing. Do me a favor, repeat the name.
Yeah, Sai Vasam, like possum, but it's a V as in Victor, ASAM. Sai Vasam.
I
He's a
definitely
good
got
man.
to get that.
It's easy mode coaching.
And like I always say, ladies and gentlemen, and to all of our viewers out there, if you are not into reading, you can also get it on the Audible app and any bookstore. Amazon will probably have it. Jump on there and get your copy. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up, and I'll start reading that today.
Okay, this is our last sponsor. It's Leo Marino Jr. Boxing Gym. If you're ready to get into the best shape of your life, why not train with the best? Shout out to Leo Marino Jr. Boxing Gym. Real boxing training, strength and conditioning, discipline and confidence building. Located at 6326 College Boulevard, OP, Kansas. Whether you're a beginner or experienced fighter, this is where champions train.
Yes. And I know him very well. He's like a brother to me. I watched that team down there start kids off at 3 and 4 years old boxing, and I know a couple of them right now that are boxing professionally because of the skills and the training. And I've also watched several of my friends go down to the same gym and not compete and just go down there for fitness and training and lose a ton of weight. So whether you want to get active and get in the ring, test your ability and your skills out, or get down into that dress you wore back when you was in high school, or them jeans, holla at those guys down there at the Leo Moreno Jr. Boxing Gym. I guarantee he's going to work you out. Part 2 of our segment today, one of the topics I want to talk about is forgiveness versus resentment, learning to father yourself, mentorship and brotherhood, breaking generational cycles, and becoming the father you never had. So, Darren, this is my question to you. What advice would you give the man listening right now who still may be carrying that pain?
So I'll give you some advice for that man who's got his wound he's going to take care of, but that advice for that man as he shows up to be a father as well. So first thing is give that little guy within you a voice. If you can't do it with your own dad, find someone else that you can do it with, or if your dad's passed on, set up that empty chair and have that conversation. But you've got to find an opportunity to give that little guy a voice, so that those feelings that have been repressed come out, and you have a chance to express it and get it out of there, because you will not believe how freeing it feels. It's just one more thing you're not having to carry around with you. Life gives you enough stresses as it is, and your body's like, I can't take anymore. You got to unload that package so you can take on some greater things in your life. And the second part is be there for someone else. Not just an opportunity to share that and express that for yourself, but be there for somebody else who needs you, someone who may not have that father around, or someone who may not quite be ready to have that conversation with their father. Be there to help them go through their healing, because frankly, just as Chuck was saying earlier there, as we talk about this, we both heal conversation, and talking is a big part of that. The second piece is just as a dad, break that cycle. It's tough. I mean, it's hard. Sometimes we've already kind of set some patterns already as dads, right? Maybe we're being a dad is a lifelong process. But anywhere you happen to be in the stage, find a way to come back in and break that cycle. For me, a lot of it was honoring the kids for who they were. We very early on figured out, with their help, both observing them and listening to them, here's who I am. And I think the biggest weight we can lay on our kids as parents is expectations. And you got to understand, each and every one of those kids, they've got their own path. They've got their own mission. They've got their own passions, their own. I mean, our kids couldn't be, more different from each other along the way. And the key is, the more of those expectations you lay down on them, rather than listening to them and hearing who they are, the more you're not breaking the cycle. You're continuing the cycle along the way. So find a way to just stay engaged to who they are and support them for who they are, and to find ways to bring more of the world to meet them on their terms growing up. Because as they go out into the world, they're going to be more healthy for it, and they're going to find that they were valued for who they were, and that the very fact that you're even showing up is a great start. Just being present in their lives is kind of step number one before you get into the rest. But I feel like, to the degree that we can, we got to stop, we got to pause, we got to reflect, we got to figure out how we break the cycle. And at the same time, too, so much of that with all of us, the world doesn't need healing. We need healing. And that as we heal ourselves, the world heals along the way, because we show up in a different way, and we look at life in a different way, and we're present in a different way, right? So start here and then kind of let it flow out.
Yes, it starts from the inside. Ooh, those some beautiful words, man. Brother Blackhawk, what do you think about this episode? This is the first real one.
I'm loving it. And Darren, he has a lot of golden nuggets to drop just from experience, and as him being a man. For me, the older I've gotten, is just like Darren said, sharing and showing your emotions, right? Like, when we was growing up, I had so many brothers, and episodes before I explained where, like I would get hurt and they're like, oh, don't cry, suck it up. And it's like, no, like Darren said, it's a process it, get over it, and move on to the next thing. And like for me, as far as being a father, I was thrown in there. I met my wife, we was dating at the time. And so she already had 3 kids. So it's like automatic, I was an instant father. And so it's not like I had time to prepare for it, or like, okay, yeah, she's pregnant now. Okay, 9 months later, we're having this baby. So it was very hard, and especially since our dad was absent, he didn't show us how to be a man, how to be a husband, a father, or anything like that. Probably the biggest thing I regret as far as being a father, not enjoying like having fun. It's not the way I parented or anything like that as being a father, because I'd always try to talk to my kids. We had a lot of nieces and nephews around. I would try to be a good male role model for them. But I think it was just having that open dialogue. Like, okay, hey, you messed up. Now what's next? What are you going to do next? And it's not always coming down with the hammer, having how some people say the iron fist, and we got to, everybody line up, kind of like when we was kids growing up. Like, hey, why are you getting that butt? Why are you in trouble? Let's talk about it. Having those hard conversations. And sometimes the kids don't want to talk about, like, hey, when you're ready to talk about it, you can come out your room and we could talk about it. That's about being a man, is showing, yeah, you're tough, you're firm, but at the same time, you're soft. You have a genuine heart. You have their well-being at hand. And I think a lot of kids will open up as long as hey, no matter what, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to be here for you. And it's like Darren said, right? Not only showing up, but being present. Being present. And one thing I've learned and I've shared with other people as far as being a father is being consistent. Don't be like a hard ass one day, then you're like, oh man, I'm your best friend the next day. It's like, just be consistent, be somewhere in the middle. Don't go from high to low or low to high. Just be consistent, show up, show them what a man looks like. Hey, I'm here to help out around the house. I'm here to go to your school events, your sporting events. I'm here to support you. When I became an instant father, I was like, I wanted to give the kids that I inherited by saying yes, or at least my wife saying yes to me when I asked her to marry me, was I want to be that dad that I didn't have. I want to be present in their life. And guess what? I would go to their sporting events. Sometimes I would coach their sporting events. Sometimes I would, whatever activities I'd go to. And I'm not saying like I didn't drop the ball. Sometimes I did. That's just part of being human. But it's like you have to be consistent though. And that's my big takeaways. Gave those golden nuggets throughout the show of when he was angry when he was a kid, but why was he angry?
Yeah, definitely a powerful episode, man. Very powerful. DB, I'm glad I met you, man. It's crazy how God has a way of putting people in the room and how life processes past that. Sometimes you can meet people and you can just let that one moment be a moment, or you can learn something from that one moment that takes you into many, many other moments. And ever since I've met you, I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn so much about you. You're an amazing person. I love what you're doing, not just in your personal life, but as far as trying to be active and present in the community, not just the small community, the world community. You are one of those type of people who not only see the value that you can give in a small area, you help maximize what people can really do with themselves if they see that they're worth a whole lot more than what they are. In closing, give a final thought.
Yeah.
If you could tell one message to a man struggling with father wounds, what would it be?
So the question is, be gentle with yourself, right? The very fact that you're listening to the Positive Man Show, man, give yourself a quick, gold star. It gets you on the right path. You're starting to kind of bring some new ideas to the table, kind of starting to think about things in a new way. But be gentle with yourself. This isn't sort of like you take step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's all done. It's not a linear process. I mean, you're going to go through this wave, right? This wave of, you're going to maybe get through one thing you feel like is a father wound, and you might find, oh wow, that was just one of like 10 that I got along the way. So kind of process them as they come up. Put the effort in. Take the action, because it's one thing to think about it, but you really got to take the action to have a conversation with someone and get it out. But then just know that it'll be a process, but just stick with it over time, and it'll get there. But beyond being gentle with yourself, do it in supportive company. Find your community, man. I think you've got part of it right here in front of you, even if it's just listening to the podcast. But find those people in your life that you can find and build community with and conversation with, because you can really support each other on the journey.
Most definitely. Well, thank you to our guest, Darren Beck, for joining us today and sharing your insight and your heart with us. Big dog, it means a lot, man. This conversation is important because healing is possible. And remember, you don't have to carry wounds forever. You can grow past them. You can heal them. You can become the father that you never had. I'm Dr. Coffee Cup Chuck.
And I'm Blackhawk.
And this has been the Positive Man Show. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
And don't forget to spread your wings.
And have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. And as always, stay positive, people.